Yes, sir.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So glad to see you and Happy New Year. For those who are joining us for this month's Finance and Appropriations Committee, very glad to see you all. I had a little pop-up on my screen, so I apologize for that. Today we have a very short agenda, so what I want to do is explain what our agenda is. We'll call the meeting to order, of course, then go into our approving of the agenda and also the previous minutes. In addition to that, we will go into the finance report for December and then adjourn. I think before that, there'll be just a short conversation on terms for members that we want to appoint. And I think that there's going to be a quick alert to two of our members who have 1 year left. So we'll just talk slightly about that and move to adjourn. So let's get started. Can we have a roll call, Mr. Treasurer?
Board Member Brown?
I'm here.
Board Member Cole?
Present.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Ms. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Jordan?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
And Board Member Ragland. You have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. With that, is there a motion to approve the minutes from December 9th?
Move to approve the minutes from December 9th.
I'll second.
All right. It's been motioned and seconded. Are there any questions, concerns, abstentions? If we can go to vote now.
All right. Board Member Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Jordan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
And Board Member Brown.
Yes.
That motion carried.
All right. Thank you all. Well, let's get started. Mr. Treasurer, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. The first item and the only item tonight on the agenda is the monthly financial report for December. And I trust that you all see that appropriately. Monthly financial report for December, we're going to review it here today, and then it will go to the board on January 19th. Through December, the revenues continued to run above plan if they has in the past, as well as expenditures running under plan. And so both of those variances are favorable. As you can see here, revenues are just under 30 million above plan, about 6%, and expenditures close to 48 million under plan, or almost 10% under plan. Results in a cash balance of about 76.6 million above the plan at 327 million. Just wanted to give you a picture of the ending cash balance and how it has behaved. You can see that from July to September, we lagged a bit, but that was because of that property tax collection delay. And then since then, while we have trended like we expect in terms of direction of cash balance, in other words, we're spending more than we're bringing in each month, we have not eaten into cash balance as much as the plan would call for. So you can see that while we're in the same direction, we are higher, and that's the 76 million increase in the cash balance over plan. We've actually, since the beginning of the year, built a cash balance. We built about 41 million to our cash balance since the beginning of the year, but we had expected to eat into our cash balance by about 35 million. So that those two put together give you that 76 million difference. Highlights for revenue this month: state funding up about 18 million. That is skewed this month by a little over 19.5 million received in a Bureau of Workers' Comp dividend payment. You might have heard about it in the news, but the Bureau has in the past given refunds of prior year's premiums. But this year they declared, in addition to that, this dividend of 19.5 million. So this is in addition to almost 4.8 million in a refund that we received back in November. However, the refunds go into our workers' comp fund. On the books, it's Fund 027, but we run our workers' comp premiums and payroll deductions and expenses through a separate fund outside of the general fund, and hence don't appear in the 5-year forecast. Workers' comp is a payroll, kind of like a payroll tax expense out of the general fund. To put it in perspective, we paid an annual premium of $4.7 million in December out of that fund 427. So you can see we get a refund of almost 4.8 million. That was for one of the prior years. We have a premium about that of 4.7, and yet we get this dividend of 4 times that amount, 19.5 billion, and that went in the general fund. And the only line item it appeared on is the same one, and you'll see that it skews the state funding line because it comes in as aid from the state and kind of throws it off. So it ends up in there with state foundation monies as well. So I could track that, and I'm going to show you some with and without data so you can see where we would be if this had not actually come into play. Just graphically, you can see property taxes remain slightly above, no change this month. State revenue again jumps up a bit as over plan, and all other revenue does continue to run above plan. This is the picture for state aid on a monthly basis. You can see here that it pops up. Current revenue jumps up fairly significantly, and that's that $19 million dividend that skewed it. Without the dividend, the graph would look like this, and you can see that we drop back under the current plan on a monthly basis, but still above that equal monthly plan that I've been comparing to. So we're still, without that dividend, we're still behaving a lot like an equal monthly payment plan than we would what our experience, our historical data would tell us that state revenues would come in. On a year-to-date variance, you can see here that we do end up at 21 million and 18 million above those two plans. So I'm going to show you what it is without it, but I want to draw your attention to the scale difference here. This scale over on the left-hand side is in tens of millions, and as we move forward to what it is without the $19.5 million dividend, you see that variance scale drops to single digits. And so the variance above the equal monthly plan without that dividend would be about 1.7 million. And on the plan that's based on our budget, about 1.4 million below plan. So it really does skew that data, but I can track it and show you the difference. Looking at all other revenues year to date, we're still waiting in the restricted federal grant area. We're still waiting for our Q-SCUBY rebate from the feds, the Qualified School Construction Bond interest rebate from them. We're actually waiting for 2 of them. The second one from last fiscal year and the first one from this fiscal year. I believe one of them has come in January, so that should show up next month. But I'm anticipating, actually, I should get 3 this year rather than just 2. Property tax allocation, it's essentially unchanged, running at 383 under plan year to date. Other revenues are now about 6.2 million over. Pilots are the big contributor as an individual line item, and they're about 6.7 million above plan through December. Other financing sources were only slightly changed from last month, and they're running under plan about 738,000. Just a reminder of what our heat map looks like. What those categories are. There's the heat map for the revenues. Except for line 1.06, all of the revenues and favorable month-to-date percent variances are all involve very small dollar amounts. I talked to you last month about how when a line item has a very small dollar amount in it and it doesn't come in the case of general property tax, there was a very small amount expected this month. I think it was like $9,000, some residual data from past experiences. But anyway, when you don't receive that, it's $9,000 under plan, but it falls in the on-plan category for variances. But it's 100% short, so it results in a large percent variance. And so those aren't terribly meaningful. Year to date, they're all favorable except for 1.045, which, as I said, we're waiting for that federal money to come in, and all other financing sources, and that there is it's a $1 million line item. So that's why you get that skewed to a very unfavorable with just a moderately unfavorable dollar amount. So again, the favorable on plan are very favorable pretty much in all the revenue categories. Moving on to expenditures year to date, personnel continues to run under plan, and in fact, this month it was under plan by 4.7 million. That was 1.6 million under plan in salaries and wages and 3.1 million in benefits. You can see here the 20.6 million that we're under plan year to date, 15.6 is in salaries and about 5 million in benefits. I'll do a little bit more breakdown of that for you in a second. On purchase services, another month under plan, 2.3 million under plan. Professional technical services, property services, internet access, and tuition are topping the categories as having year-to-date variances under plan. And those variances for those line items range from about 2.3 million to 2.9 million under plan. Throughout purchase services, there's only one line item that's running over plan. That's telephone services, and it's running over plan by a whopping $28,000. So keep in mind, too, that the plan is based upon our forecast, and our forecast is based on our budgets. And so since we typically do run under budgets, running under plan here is more an indication of where we are versus the November 5-year forecast than perhaps what you might traditionally think about the annual budgets. The annual budgets aren't really budgets for kind of cash flow because we know that we won't spend our entire budgets throughout the year. Charter continues under plan, 700,000 month to date, and now at 5 million year to date. Supplies and materials under plan, 738,000 on a month to date basis, and on a year to date basis, you're looking at 3 million. The contributors there, software and fuel, are running about 1.4 and 1.9 million respectively under plan. And on the flip side, textbooks remain about 2 million over plan due to the previous large textbook purchase that we talked about a month or two ago. Capital outlay, 1.2 million under plan month to date. And so it's now at 4.7 million under plan. This is mainly in the technical equipment line. Graphically, you can see personnel, charter, and all other expenditures under plan. Breaking out all other expenditures, you can see the big contributor is purchase services to that under plan variance. Our heat map for expenditures, it's all green, more green probably than the revenue side. And when I compare to last year, there's some interesting things here. The only thing remarkable on the revenue side is the jump in state aid. You can see that it's 14 million over last year. Without that, we would not be, we had, I think, 19.5 million in that refund. And so that variance would be drastically impacted there by comparison. On the year-to-date to last year on expenditures, you can see personnel still running now about 2 million last year. We were about 125 million over last year, so pretty much unchanged from last year. And again, that's primarily in the area of overtime, substitutes, and the severance pay line that are running behind where we were this time last year. All the other lines remain, substantially the same in terms of relationship to where we were last year, and the total has dropped to 7.2 million over last year from about 9.5 million over last year. I did some digging into purchase services and wondering why we're running behind plan so much there. The big contributor there is line 410, professional and technical services. And the key item in there, when I drilled down actually into vendors, is our contract for school resource officers. And at this point, this time last year, we would have been around close to 600,000 expended, and we don't have that expense this year. So that is the key item explaining why that line's running behind last year. Advances out, I mentioned that to you before. Those are advances to help cash flow in the WCBE and Latchkey Fund. They continue to run ahead of last year, and overall, the expenditures this year running about 8 million ahead of last year. They were about 10 million ahead of last year last month. So still in that 2 to 3% over last year. Taking another look at salaries, wages, and fringe benefits, breaking that out a little bit for you. You can see here that salary and wages have now dropped to 2.1 million under plan. They were just 298,000 last month under plan. Again, substitutes and overtime. Fringe benefits dropped to 158,000 over last year from about 423,000 over last month. So you can see that just that breakdown. I mean, we're very close to where we were last year. And again, it's simply because in the way we're operating, we're not incurring the overtime and substitute costs that we would normally incur. So in closing, through December, again, we're continuing to trend both in revenues and expenditures as we have in previous months. Revenues running above plan, expenditures below plan, and we are building a cash balance at this point, which is all good news. So that's the report for the month of December, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Always, Mr. Treasurer, thank you for that presentation. At this point in time, are there any questions?
I have a question, Chair Cole.
Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, back on a couple pages back on, I think it was supplies and materials, showed a pretty big variance from last year. I don't know if that's a timing difference or what that was, Stan.
Let me,
It was like a $7 million variance from just year over year.
yeah, are you seeing the report now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm seeing the report.
And Stan, I can jump in real quick as you're pulling that up. That $7 million variance was the increase this year for textbooks.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was just going to get to it here real quick.
What was it for? I'm sorry.
Textbooks.
Textbooks. Okay.
Yeah, supplies and materials are 3 million under. And again, that, you know, like Scott said, that's all related to textbooks.
Hang on for me. That's not the one I was looking at. Keep going. It was a year-over-year expense, right? Hang on, right there.
Right there, yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, that's the textbook. I think it was an $8 million textbook purchase, as I recall. Am I right, Scott?
Okay. Pretty close. It was in the $7 million range, but it was like 7.1. So, but yeah, it's almost exactly what it is.
And you are correct. That would be a timing issue.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? One of the things I mentioned before, we don't have to go through it now, but one of the things I definitely want to begin to draw down some assumptions on are as CARES Act dollars continue to roll in, what are going to be those implications, if you will, to the 5-year forecast. I think it'll be a good thing for us to, again, not necessarily right now, but I think it'll be a great piece for us to kind of get an idea about where we can, you know, see how those changes will affect the budget positively and or negatively. I think a little more positively.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't be bad to share with the committee a review of all those federal and state dollars that have been made available here recently. There are, we have that first round of CARES Act money. We have CRF money, coronavirus relief fund monies. We're looking at a second round of CARES Act money. We were just talking about that today. Now, all of this runs through a fund other than the general fund, but you are correct in identifying that some of the monies are spent on items that would otherwise have been in the general fund. For instance, a lot of the PPE that we've purchased with these dollars wasn't anticipated in the general fund. So it was kind of a cost avoidance, if you will, to the general fund. So otherwise it would have been a negative impact on the forecast. On the other hand, there are some things that we've been able to supplant. That is, instead of spending general fund dollars, we can spend these federal dollars on that. And those are the ones that you're talking about. What of those expenditures that we've been able to not incur in the general fund, and how sizable might that be? And what would that impact that on the general fund forecast be? We've got that. We can certainly look at that next month even.
Yeah, some of those dollars, I think, have expanded different periods of performance that you have for those. So it'd probably be good to help understand what those new periods of performance are, because I think there's different ones for different types of the funding that you've gotten, at least.
Yeah, some differences in permissible uses, but certainly different time frames for when they must be expended. And then the feds came back and changed some of them, which would not shortened it, but extended it. So for instance, the CRF monies had to be spent by 12/30 of 2020. And then they came back and extended that to 12/31 when they realized that there were 31 days in December. They extended that to 12/31 of 21. So you get another 12 months. Those funds are pretty much expended for us because we were planning on the earlier deadline. We've got some money that can be spent out to 22 and 23. So, we can do a display of those funds, what they're being used for, timing and all of that for you. That'll be easy to do.
Okay, thank you so much for that. With that, before we adjourn, I definitely wanted to alert the committee and committee members who may be interested, or excuse me, community members who may be interested in the possibility of becoming appointed to the Finance and Appropriations Committee. We have two members, current Mr. Jordan and Mr. Miller, who have 1 year left terms. I'm greatly enjoying working with you guys. You guys add a tremendous value add. But I just expect that I'll be following up with you guys to kind of get in a sense of what you want to do moving forward, so that we're able to appropriately alert the community about next opportunities. In addition to that, I've had the conversations with Ms. Johnson and Mr. Green, who have shared that they are excited to continue their work with us. So I believe that we will be reappointing them as of next month. Is that correct, Mr. Treasurer?
Yes, I was just thinking, we don't have that on the 19th agenda, next week's agenda. And we'll either bring it in February or we might be able to get permission to add it to next Tuesday's meeting.
Okay.
The terms of the office run from February to January is the setup in the bylaws of the committee.
Yeah, so we'll work out what best recommendations for that will be, consult with the president, and ready to move forward. With that, are there any questions on that at all? Okay, awesome. And those for the community who don't know, term limits on this are 2 years. So essentially you are appointed in a February of any given off year and go until January 2 years out. So this is an awesome opportunity. I look forward to continuing to serve with you and learning more about those individuals who express an interest. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
All
No
right.
second.
Mr. Jordan motioned and Mr. Miller seconded.
Got it. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Jordan,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Board Member Brown,
Yes.
and Board Member Cole.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right. Well,
Thank
thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much for serving. And I look forward to our continued work in 2021. You guys stay healthy and we'll see you next month.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.